Hello everyone from the Novedge team and welcome to today's webinar, Crash Course on RealFlow 10's new features. Discover all the new features of RealFlow 10. Topics of this webinar will include Diverso multiphysics solver, particle Skinner Daemon, Daemon object Falloff, Falloff mode, K-volume object mode, workflow enhancement, new pack and go tool, environment variables usage within RealFlow, and new export option under each object. Our webinar presenter, Brandon Young, started his VFX career in 2003. He has worked at Crafty Apes, Blur, Scanline, and Luma Pictures, to name a few. He's currently in Atlanta, Georgia, supervising various projects. Before we get going, here's an overview of what we do in Novedge. Novedge is one of the largest online stores for design software. We offer a huge assortment of software solutions that cater to virtually every designer's needs. You just need to come visit us at novedge.com and, check it out. And for more daily software news and limited time promotions, pay a visit to the Novedge blog and follow us on Facebook, Google+, or Twitter. Coming up next week, a webinar on the latest Maxwell Render version number 4. And last but not least, today's webinar is free and it's being recorded live. And if you want to rewatch this or any webinar episode in our collection, just head on over to Novedge's YouTube or Vimeo channels. And now, without further ado, I'm going to share Brandon's screen so he can start demoing right away. No more suspense. You can see it all and you can see it now.
Hey, looks like we're working now, so. All right, so let's get started here. But before we get into RealFlow 10's new stuff, I just kind of want to go over some what my machine is doing and where you guys can kind of get some drivers and whatnot, because the new RealFlow 10 stuff is really exciting in the aspect of basically we can do a lot of cool simming really fastly on the GPU now. And some sort of stuff with the CPU, with the OpenCL stuff. So if you kind of go over, I'll see if I can pull this site here real quick. Pull this out here. This OpenCL drivers for your CPU actually. Now this is kind of interesting. We won't really go too much into this with this because this is sort of a new feature, but not really. I think it's just a little bit better implemented. But this, if you download this stuff here, you want to get the drivers and not the SDK. But this is kind of nice to have for other applications as well. If you do some sort of research, search and development, or even use Houdini, Houdini will actually take advantage of this.
Hi, Brandon. I have just one comment to make. I think you're showing multiple screens, and I think you mean to show the screen with RealFlow, right? And it's it's minimized. So if you want, we can just take your time. We can try again and share the screen.
Yeah, I'll put the screen too. We'll see if it, can you.
I'll let you know if it happens.
Okay.
I'll maybe I can take the screen back and give it back to you like we did. Okay. Okay.
Weird, so.
It happens all the time.
All right, there's screen. Okay, yeah, okay, Mars. All right, let's see if this is working.
Okay.
Now, oh, is this a little better now? Okay.
That's perfect. Okay. There you go. That's a beautiful thing of being live.
All right.
No faking it. Yeah. Okay, take it away.
All right. Well, anyways, kind of back to this OpenCL stuff. You guys can download this, and you can see if you come over to our little simulate button here and hold this down here, and let's see if we can cancel this. Hold this down and come down to our options. You'll see that this OpenCL CPU is grayed out because I don't have the drivers currently installed, but they do actually work. And just I'm going to show you guys really quickly just a little video I did briefly back here about a month or two ago. And this is basically, I was doing this video, this test to see how much I can push onto my GPU. And my current GPU that I'm using is a GTX 1070 with 8 gigs of RAM. And to give you some background, this was about 10.1 million particles and took about 22 seconds per frame. So that's incredibly fast. So that's pretty exciting. I mean, basically, can do these huge sims we never thought really possible, at least in the amount of time. You know, it's super fast. So yeah, let's go ahead. I guess start getting some of this new RealFlow stuff here with the new Diverso solver stuff. So I got made this quick little scene here just to kind of show you. Oops, see, my computer's doing something funky here. There we go. Oh, my simulation options jumped over to the other screen here. Go ahead and cancel this. Made this quick little scene here with two different emitters here. We have a point-based dynamic and an SPH. We're just going to go over real quickly the differences of the SPH and the PVD stuff here. First off, the PVD is a lot faster. It's a really fast implementation of the SPH stuff. The SPH stuff is still SPH. You know, it's going to look more fluidy. It's going to have more of a, you know, this kind of a RealFlow kind of emitter-looking effect here. We'll go ahead and send this out real quickly to show you. We'll bring our options up here, and we're going to turn this CUDA GPU so this will work. This is where you would do that, and if you want to turn that on. And so you can go ahead and do this here. Let's go ahead and start simming. And you kind of see already, I just put a simple noise on. You can see that with, you know, not upping our substeps or anything like that, that our SPH is a little bit more stable, and we kind of start getting a little bit crazy here with our PVD. Our settings for the stuff here is, of course, a little different. We're going to have, let's turn the, I'll go over here to our SPH, and let me pull this down here. Where did we go? Right here. So we have our, you know, viscosity and surface tension. If we come over our PVD, we have surface tension and dampening. Now, the difference in between these are basically this dampening is going to act like viscosity, sort of. We can bump this up to, say, 1 and reset this and sim it again here and see. And we start to see the dampening starts to kind of calm down our simulation, but at the same time, you know, we're not getting this cool stuff here. And you know, this both applications have you know, uses for both stuff. You know, they're both really fast on the GPU. They both have incredible speed increases. But the PVD stuff, you know, it's you know, you can use it for blood or any sort of, like, you know, really quick sort of simulation stuff. Let's see here. And another quick just to know, it's kind of cool they added into this is this export option under all this stuff here now. Before you had to go press F12 and it would bring in your export central, and you know, do this in here, and this is still, of course, still here. But this is kind of nice to do if you just want to go down here and be like, oh well, I only want you know, Olympic files instead of, you know, RPCs, or you know, you want your PRTs or whatever, and that's pretty cool. But so let's go ahead and so the SPH and the PVD stuff is not that exciting, so we're going to go ahead and move on to some of the granular stuff. Kind of show the settings of what that, how that runs exactly here. Can we come up here to desktop, sandbox? Oops, not that one. We're just there. Let's go to sand. Sand and snow. And kind of show you some of the different settings of how this works. So I made this little guy here. Instead of doing a sphere, would be a little bit more interesting to look at. So right now, we'll kind of walk you through on how to make this. The guy turn into sand and fall down. Pretty straightforward. So let's go ahead and select him, and let's do fill object. What this will end up doing here, we'll make an emitter and a domain for our Diverso stuff here, and a hub. And a quick little note too is, if you don't want this hub to show up, sometimes it can be annoying for people. The central hub is, you can just simply tab and come down to add to local default hub. And now if you turn this off, once you start making nodes, it won't make that. So let's go ahead and turn that off for now, because it does kind of get annoying if you're, you know, just want to like do more separate, more kind of elaborate sims, or, you know, if you're a neat freak or whatever. So let's go ahead and do this. So we have our sand guy here. We have some this guy filled up with some particles right now. So let's go ahead and look at what kind of particles he's filled up with. Let's come up to here, our type, and just simply come down and press granular. That's it. And let's go ahead and hide him as well. Okay, so we can just kind of see this. And since it's hard to see what's going on. We can also display type here, go sphere, kind of get more of a look to see what's happening here. And let's connect our little collision cross here to this. We don't want our test subject, but we want our plane. And let's go ahead and tab and make a gravity. Well, sometimes that doesn't always work, but let's do that. There we go. And let's go ahead and save, is always important, and simulate, and see what happens here. Usually what happens here is we have their default settings works great for just kind of like basic dry sand. Nothing super crazy. But this is usually pretty good settings for just that. Now let's go ahead and go look at some of these settings to see what the settings do and how they react with other things. So let's go back up here. So we have our resolution, of course, that's just going to up our particle count. Density, the density is the density of the particles. Now, if we were to mix two fluids, say Diverso, SPH and this, if we were to make the density lighter, this sand would theoretically, and it should, usually does, start to float on top, just like foam or whatever. And interpenetration. So interpenetration is basically just a force that repels other particles from each other. It defaults at 1. And another quick tip, if you don't know what any of these little guys mean, you can just simply press on here, and it probably won't show up on my screen, but yeah, it shows up on my other screen. It shows the help, and it explains what this little option does. For now, though, we're just going to keep this on 1. Friction is simply the friction between the particles. Static friction is a little different. Static friction, you can almost think of static friction as an attraction or a threshold, and based off of how much force it needs to, the particles need to get past before they'll actually break apart. So this is a 0.5 right now, and the higher you want to press it, the higher this goes, the more clumping you're going to kind of get. Same kind of with cohesion. Cohesion is kind of the same thing. It's going to have more of a stronger effect on the particles. So let's go ahead and say we want to make the particles clump up some more. So let's press this to 0.5. Roughness. Now roughness is interesting. Roughness is a parameter in which when the sand starts to have more cohesive look to it, that it will start to actually make this cool kind of pattern when it's breaking up, essentially. And this will be very apparent here. Well, let's go ahead and put this to 0.5 as well. Now stacking. Well, this is kind of interesting little parameter. Now you would think, go ahead and look at this sim again. You kind of already get this stacking effect here. And this is kind of what this is supposed to do. But what this also does is that once we start using this parameter, we start to get a little bit more stacking in through here as well. So we kind of get more of a feel of little stacks of sand or snow or whatever you're trying to do. And dampening. So dampening is one of those features that you're going to see in all their Diverso stuff pop up. This is kind of their drag, or again, dampening. And it's always good to put into a sim, because you can see here we're having a bunch of crazy stuff pop around, and that's not even because our plane, I already have some friction, I believe, on here. Let's just check. Yeah, I'll put a pretty high friction so they wouldn't go everywhere, but I have just a tiny bit of bounce and all that, but it's because we don't have any dampening on there. So let's go ahead and pop this up to say 1. And so with just these settings, let's go ahead and resend this and see what happens here. We should have a little bit more stickier looking sand. Yeah, it's a little bit more, gloopy looking stuff here now. And that's what this roughness does, is it breaks this up a little bit more, off and on, So a good way, again, this is what's kind of great about RealFlow. I'm a big Houdini user as well, and I love getting in there and doing some really cool effects, but, I think this is one of the strengths of RealFlow, is like anyone can kind of come in here and kind of get something done quickly, or at least understand kind of what's going on. And this is pretty cool, and be able to show you guys the speed of this with the GPU. For instance, let's just, mess around here for a second, and let's put this up to 10. And, do this and keep the same settings and whatnot. And you can already see how fast this is going. We're doing 300,000 particles. Granted, that's not like a ton, but that's quite a bit to show, like, hey, this is working. You can see this, this is all breaking up and doing some cool stuff here. And if we want this to stack even more, we could bring this interpenetration down and put our stacking up to say, let's say, maybe not 1, but let's try to go down to 0.5 or something like that. Let me reset this guy here. We'll watch our little guy just fall apart. But yeah, it's kind of fun to do these little tests and see what settings do what. And now it's kind of, you're starting to see a little bit more stuff here, kind of clump up here. Now we're starting to see it stack more with those parameters. It's just simple as that, pretty much. And so a lot of this stuff does interact with other particle systems and not. The elastics and ridges we'll go to in a little bit, but there is some sort of they don't talk too well back with each other a lot, but you can use the we'll get into more of that later, but anyways, yeah, just kind of want to do this. Now, an interesting thing though too, I want to look at show you guys some of the sub-step stuff. Now, in the manual it says, hey, you know what, you're going to need a lot more sub-steps for granules. Now, I'll show you guys something, and this is very interesting, and I'm just going to come across this the past couple of days, because a lot of times what I'll do is just leave our min-max sub-steps at 2. But let's go ahead and put this to like 5. And last night I was messing with this stuff a little bit, and I was getting some really weird results here. And I'll show you. So this is up to 5. Let's go ahead and save, make sure it doesn't crash on us. As I'll start getting stuff to fall and get a lot more things to fall through faster. And I found that lower the sub-steps, funnily enough, sometimes will give me better results in this. And this is kind of one of those things, one of those to taste, See, we're starting to get a lot more stuff bouncing around, so we're going to have to compensate with that in our dampening, in all this. But so that's something to note too, that our sims are going to look quite a bit different, with our sub-steps, and it's not always desirable, for some of the stuff, because let's say if we're trying to simulate sand or snow, we don't need to see every little particle interacting with each other. We really just kind of want to get the motion and the feel and the look of everything kind of in there, right? So that's kind of basically how you set this up. It's pretty simple. There's not a lot to it. It does work with the filter daemons and stuff. So if you wanted to switch around and put, let's say once it gets past a certain point, you want to make wet sand and it dry, you can totally do that. Maybe if I have enough time at the end, I can set that up for you guys. But so up next, let's go ahead and show you another fun little thing that we set up here is the elastics. The elastic stuff was very interesting to kind of mess with and kind of get going and knowing the kind of limitations of what it does. I made this little squishy guy here. Yes. I don't know if you guys know the hydraulic press channel, but this is going to be what we're going to be working with. He doesn't know what's going to hit him. So how to make elastics and how they work and what they do. So let's go ahead and select our little fella here and press elastic. And what this will do when you press this is it will make a Diverso domain. We'll change this to elastic for us. And then what it will do is take a particle skinner, and it will make a particle skinner, and it will then skin the objects that we want to deform with our control particles from our elastic domain essentially here. And that's as pretty simple as it gets. Basic settings. Let's go ahead and kind of dive in without messing with a whole bunch of stuff. So we want to keep our particle skinner off to the side because it's kind of doing its own thing. But we want the domain to be affected by this and our two cubes here, right? And so let's leave everything on default. Go ahead and save it. Let's double check and make sure we got CUDA stuff on. Yep, that does matter. It's quite a bit slower, so let's go ahead and simulate and see what happens to this guy. All right, so he's already starting to get squished down. Look at that. And this is really good test too for what we're doing actually to show you. Look, he just plops right out of there. To show you kind of how this stuff works, is we're really pushing the limits here. As you can see, we're starting to get some artifacting, with this mesh. And what's funny enough is we start playing this, Now some of it will pop back out. We follow him down a little bit, you know. So we can mess with these settings here in our elastics here, kind of go over this, and there's really not that many settings how this works. The auto collision essentially is the force inside the object trying to basically repel. You can set this higher than 1, I believe. Yeah, you can set higher than 1. I usually leave it at 1 or 0.5 or something like that. You can set 0.5 in body stiffness. Let's put this down to say 0.1. And the body stiffness is essentially the jiggliness, the hardness of the object. And let's go and put some dampening in there too. And these little tests are kind of fun to run as you get this. Now, also to take into account, now we have some settings of particle scanner, and we have the resolution. The resolution makes a huge difference as well. See, the softer we make this guy, and then when we bring it back up, that some of the stuff will and won't. And this is really going to depend, again, now on sub-steps. This deformation stuff here, like we're having some errors in through here. Whoops, let me close that. Made a mess there, didn't I? Let me go ahead and fix it real quick. Horizontal. And pull that over real quick, make this our relationship editor again. There we go. Sorry about that. Oh, come on. Oh, come on. There we go. It's going to matter on basically our sub-steps and whatnot to get this kind of fixed, and somewhat on our particle scanner. So I'll go over some of the stuff here for the particle scanner. The search distance, and the search distance is essentially how far this is going to search within the particles for deformation for the deformation to work. It's at 0.2 currently. Let's try to explain this a little simpler. So we got this guy, he's getting deformed, right? So the further we put this down, or higher up, I mean, the more it's going to search through these particles inside and out to see what kind of deformation is happening. It seems 0.2 for most stuff works pretty well. I haven't had any sort of issues with, you know, more or less than that. I've played with it. You up this, it will get slower. Same with the max control particles. Max control particles are basically how you specify around an object's vertex, like how many particles are basically being used for the deformation. And again, this will make your sim a lot slower the higher this goes. We won't mess with this too much, but you know, for this stuff, we can kind of fix a lot of this with our sub-steps and resolution. Because right now, if we come up to our domain, we have 21,000 particles. That's quite a lot, but you know, we can add some more to this and get even more detail out of it. Let's go ahead and actually do some of that real quick. Let's see here. Let's go ahead and up our resolution to say 5, and we'll leave all this stuff the same. And let's go ahead and reset this, and then let's look at our sub-steps here. So it's under elastic, so right now it's 5 and 5. Let's go ahead and just put 10 and 10. And that should help some for sure. Reset this to be sure. There we go. Of course, now it's going a little bit slower, but we're doing 105,000 particles for deformation. As we can see, we can actually hide our cubes here. While this is going, we're starting to see, we're starting to get a little less artifacts. There we go, now he's really getting mushed in there. But yeah, so this sort of stuff is pretty great. And when I jump into the rigid stuff here in a minute, I'll show you that multi-bodies work with this stuff as well, which is really kind of cool. But yeah, so we kind of fixed that whole stuff with our resolution and our domain here, our substeps. And this isn't like a super high res mesh, and that's something else to note. Like well, what if we got a couple things here and there. We have to up the substeps some more, but that's a question. Like, hey, well, what about if I do a really high res mesh? Well, you're you're going to add more particles for each vertice essentially. So it's kind of like this dancing game, going back and forth to make sure, and that it's going to deform the way you want. And also, you got to also keep in mind that you're probably not going to be squishing stuff like this much with the elastics. So it's kind of cool to kind of push this to its limits and see what you can and can't do, essentially. But let's go ahead and go into. I'll go into the rigid stuff real quick. The rigid stuff is pretty simple. There's not a lot to the rigid stuff. And then I'll go over some of the friction stuff, because the friction on these particles does apply to other objects. So let's just jump in for this little file made for the rigid stuff here. Alrighty, where are you at? Rascal here. Rigid and rigid. Okay. Yes, we do. We're going to remove you. So yeah, it looks like I've already kind of set this one up. So let's pull this over here, see what we got going on here. So we have 4 very little guys here, and all I did was, actually I can remake this really quickly. Just to walk you guys through it. Let's go ahead and do that. It's our test subject. We want him there. Let's delete our array. We'll leave this, and we'll delete this. So let's show our test subject. And move this over a little bit more. There he is here. So what's really great, we can come up here to Tools and go down to Create Array. And this will bring up our array. And if you guys have never used this, this is really useful for testing. You ever see those videos on Vimeo or YouTube? A lot of people will do just to test the rigid body stuff or the elastics. This is a good way to make a bunch of those little objects and stuff. But for now, what we can do is just make 8 objects. And our item distance between each object is 1. And we'll create a multi-body. And by creating multi-body, what that will do inside RealFlow is it'll make an object sort of like a grouped object, but it'll only make it 1 node, which is really useful, because if you had, like, say 1,000 nodes and you just want to make 1 multi-body, then you can just use that 1 node instead. So let's go ahead and do that. So we already messed up here. It's look like they're interpenetrating. So let's go ahead and just delete that, and let's do it again. I had a feeling that was going to happen. So where is my array again? There it is. Okay. Oh, I need to select them. Alrighty. So let's go ahead and put 3, our distance here. Do that. Oh boy, the wrong one. Again, let's go select just our test subject here, and do the create array. Alright, 3. Let's see if this will work. Yeah, there we go. Now let's hide our test subject, our original guy here, and we will move these little fellas up and over, and let's kind of do a little bit of a spin to them there. Now let's simply select these guys and select rigid, and it did the same thing. So it made our domain and just simply put this to rigid. Our auto collision and body stiffness is to 1. And let's add our gravity and our plane for collision. And let's save it. Double check that we have our CUDA on. Yep. And so as you can see here, I've already stuck this on for a min and max substep. So let's just put this to 5 just to show you guys what's going to happen. Now substeps matter a lot more in, again, this rigid and elastic stuff. So let's go ahead and simulate this. And watch these little guys fall. Oh, look at that! They fell right through that floor because we did not have them connected. Let's go ahead, and since we're almost about to hit the floor there, so we can just simply simulate from that point. There we go. But it didn't attach the particle scanner, unfortunately. Well, looks like maybe that just does not work that way. Let's just reset it all over again, though. There we go. Now it's working. All right. And these is pretty cool, so we can mess around and have these little guys, do their thing. One thing to note too is you're starting to see some interpenetration in here, and that's where the substeps and resolution is going to kind of be in your favor. Funny enough, though, resolution doesn't matter as much as it would, say, in elastics, because we're not really deforming this mesh as much, right? So, but our body stiffness, you would think, let's say, hey, well, this is basically elastics with the rigid body thing, plopped on top, but it's really not true. This has its limits, you know. So if we were to put this to 0.1, you know, let's go ahead and just kind of look when they hit. You know, they don't really move at all. You know, they don't deform that much at all. So let's reset this real quick, simulate, and let's see what happens now. Yeah, so you start to see a little bit of a deformation there now, and actually, see that? It looks like they melded into one, but look at that. You two get a room. But this, so it's kind of interesting, you know. So a lot of this stuff has to, you really have to mess with these sub-steps. A common question, I guess, and if I was going to say this, like, why would you want to use this over rigid bodies? You get some deformation, I guess. It's, you know, something new that they put in there. It's kind of fun to mess with. I don't see a huge advantage right now over using it versus regular rigid bodies within, you know, like the Carriante solver inside RealFlow. You know, we already get, you know, really good stuff with that. I mean, we get some sort of, you know, deformation in there for this, which is cool and all, but, you know, it's not super necessary, but it's good to have in the tool belt of things in RealFlow for sure if you want to do that sort of simulation inside there. And let's see here. One other thing we're going to go over here, a couple other things, is the friction. So I made a little file for that as well, and this kind of shows you how it all kind of works together a little bit here. Let's see here, friction, and I think, yeah, it is elastic ramp. Okay, so we have a little guy here, and let's go ahead and hide the grid. You can press G to hide the grid here. We have a little guy here. Pretty simple scene setup. Just have a ramp with him on it as a elastic solver here, and he's going to go into this little Diverso pool. And how this works is you're not having the particles inside here interact with the particles here, but since the mesh is being deformed and move around, you can simply just use that as a collision. Like right over here. There's our guy here, and it's, you know, doing its thing. Pool enclosure. Okay, cool. And let's just, I want to double check my settings, all this stuff real quickly to make sure it's not going to crash on us. So we have a resolution of 50. Let's go ahead and just knock this down to 25. Body steps 0.1. That should be fun looking. And let's look at our options here. Make sure we're using CUDA. It's very important for this stuff. And oh, again, I don't know if I think I mentioned this in the beginning, but you know, when you're using CUDA or your graphics board, now you are limited to the amount of VRAM on your board. And just, I didn't bring this up earlier, this part, is I have this little tool called GPUZ, and I'll show you here. This is a pretty nifty little tool. When you start to use the GPU stuff for more and more stuff, you can essentially see like, oh hey, this is how much memory is being used in the GPU load, and this will be kind of fun to, you know, it's good to see essentially when you're doing that, because if you're starting to run out of video RAM, you know, these things will crash a lot of times. So it's good to keep an eye on that sort of thing. So let's go ahead and simulate this guy and see what he does. Now maybe the first frame for some of this stuff like this is we're doing a bunch of particles down here, and we're also, you know, doing all this stuff up here. But we also have some friction on this ramp as well. So let's see what he does. So he's going to go down and start to flop down here. And the friction works pretty well. It doesn't work as good as, say, like say SPH particles on here, you know, but you're going to have to really up your resolution and for those particles to catch, you know. But this is kind of a cool example to see kind of this stuff and this stuff kind of working in here, you know, back and forth. And you kind of see this is still pretty quick, you know, we're simulating close, I don't know how many particles to get all together. We have like 200,000 there, and we have 300,000 particles, you know, pretty darn fast. And we'll watch him hit in there. We'll bring up the our ramp here in a second to show you the friction on it. And there he goes. You can take a little plunge. Look at that. That's pretty cool too. If you look over here, oh, there he goes. Taking a little swim. So let's go ahead and stop this. You know, it's so much fun to see. And see now we can see where this collision data is coming in at as well. It's pretty fun to see that, you know, coming in there. And you know, if you're new to RealFlow and you want to change this sort of like the collisions, I can show you that real quickly here. Let's pull a closure. We can go ISO surface and see where that collision data is. It's pretty useful. And we can change the size of this, of course, and we want to come up here to our cell size and, you know, to 0.05, for instance, and that will get a little closer into that. But yeah, there's that. And that's kind of fun to see everything kind of working hand in hand, you know, relatively quickly, you know, for this sort of thing. But the ramp here, our friction actually I only had 0.001, so I hardly any friction. If we were to say put this to 0.1, it's quite a bit more friction. And I'll just, for speed's sake, I'm going to turn off the pool and not sim it. So I'll press our little sim button here and reset this. And let's see, we should get some catch. It'll also take a second, but I should give this a little bit more of he should kind of tumble, if I remember correctly. Or yeah, so to go forward a little bit more, but it doesn't look like much, but he is actually moving a little differently for sure. Make sure, yeah. Yeah, so he's starting to tumble there. Before he was just on his butt. So the friction does work, and if you look, you know, some of the stuff here, you can almost like he's sticking. Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. Doing a front flip there. But yeah, so that's that. Let's go ahead and move on then, so we kind of had fun watching him take a little bath. Let's look at the pack and go tool, for instance. We can just use this scene. This is the new stuff that they added. This is really useful if you're going to, you know, moving around jobs, or you want to give this file to someone else. All you have to do is come up here to File and go Pack and Go. And it will tell you, hey, you got to save it before you want to do that. Sure do. So go ahead and save that guy. And you'll get this window, little bitty window. I like how it just comes up. It's little bitty, and you have to make it a lot bigger. There we go. So we're going to do this and press Show Details. Okay. So this tells you what the dependencies to copy and the outputs to copy. The dependencies are the stuff that is coming into the file, and of course the outputs are what's going out of the file. This will have our initial states, our objects that we're using, that we're importing in, or materials if we're using a Maxwell materials, HDR images, any node file parameters. Like say if you had a bitmap that had a file, black and white mask on there, then we could use that. And our file sequences, you know, we can copy our simulation range or not. This will not copy the simulation data, but this will basically have, you know, copy all the stuff that if we had, you know, any sort of like frame parameters in there. And same thing over here, if we were to have outputted, you know, our node simulation outputs here, we can then do that there. And all this is kind of self-explanatory, I guess, to some extent. And we can come down here individually and kind of start doing this. So let's say we wanted to do our C node pull, and if we come down to say we want to just do the Olympic animation here. As you see, this is a square. And this tells you that it's selected one aspect of this, and if we were to click on this again, that will do everything in there. So they'll basically select everything within that thing there. But just to show you how this will work real quick, let's go and cancel out of here, and let's select our pool, and let's save an initial state real quick. Okay, And now what we can do is come back to pack and go. So we'll have a few things to show you. Let's go to yes, output. Oh, we have you can output a zip file or output folder. So we're going to do zip file, show details, and it's just the basic stuff on here. Let's go OK. Start compressing. So it said, all right, it had 8 megabytes compressed to 3. You just double check where that went. I think that was under friction, yeah. So, yeah, there it is. So now if we were to open this up, we got our little folder here, and we got our input, our initial state, our input objects. So it took our little test subject, put it in there. So that's pretty useful. So you don't have to do it by hand anymore. You used to have to write your own script or whatnot to have that in there. Let's see here. We're going to go back to our sandbox file here. I'm going to reset this, and let's show our grid. And I'm just going to go over real quickly the Daemon object fall-off mode. And you guys probably seen a video on this on like YouTube or what have you. But let's go ahead and just do that. Let's make something real quick here. Let's not do that. Let's go ahead and make a circle. Let's make a sphere. Let's make it pretty big. And let's go ahead and make a noise. Okay. All right. So we have this, and we want to make the noise only affect the fluid inside when it hits the sphere inside the sphere here, right? So let's go ahead and point at this area here. So we want to connect our noise to our domain here. Move this over. And if we bring up our noise field and we come over, we got this stuff here is force field fall off. So enable fall off, yes. You want to display the fall off, yes. So now it gives us our fall off in a square here. But let's say we wanted to use that object. Well, we can come over to fall off bounds, select this, and see that our fall-off objects is grade. Go to Object, those 3 little lines, select our sphere, go to OK. Now, let's turn up our noise to something wacky, 10 or something. Usually pretty wild. Go ahead and save it. Simulate. Actually, let's just do real quick. So it's already kind of like I teased you there. Sorry. So make this a little faster. There we go. So we're starting. There we go. Now we're starting to get more of the stuff that's only hitting inside this object. And we have some control parameters for that. We can our fall off percentage. If we were to put this to 1, we should. If I remember correctly, we should get a little bit of a little bit more of a gradient in through there. All right, so it's a little bit smoother transition. That's pretty cool. You can get some really. This is a really good way actually to use different objects and do really cool blood effects. Actually, this is a really good way of doing it. Before, what we'd end up doing is bounding our noise and using it fall off and just putting it right on the emitter and doing that. But now this is pretty cool. We can make our own custom shapes and whatnot for this. But now if we were to say put this, where is it at here? Our fall off here, 1. So if we put this as 0, you're going to see almost no fall off. It's just going to be like once it hits here, the noise starts and then it stops. So we get to see a lot stronger in through there. So it's basically a normalized value that is taking from 0, say 1 to 0 into here, essentially throughout this volume. Let's see here. There's not much else to go. Oh, real quickly, if you guys haven't used the environment variables, these are pretty useful, especially if you're on site somewhere. We can really change up a lot of stuff, and this is kind of more of an advanced thing-ish, sort of, not really. But you can change, put in your own keys here, add your variables, and then put in your own value in here, which is really nice. So let's say your scene directory or your on site you had, say at your job, you had a certain place that you always stuck your your um, your files and your sends and all that stuff. Well, you can change it in here a lot faster. And there's another way to do that too. We can come into here and you can do it with F12. Do it here. And alternative paths. You can put some alternative project paths in here, which is super nice. So right now, what will happen is you can come up to File Preferences, and then go over here, and this is where it normally goes. And you can change it here, or you know add some more stuff with your environment variables or other project paths. And that kind of wraps up about everything right now. I try to make it kind of quick so I can get to some more a lot of questions, because I know you guys probably have a lot. But yeah, so this is pretty much it right now. So if you guys have any questions, I guess they'll let me know, and we can go over them, and I'll be happy to answer them.
Great job, Brandon. Yes, as Brandon said, this is your chance, guys and girls. Let us know if you know anything. This is the time to ask, and you know, this is your man. So don't let this moment go by, and ask away. So we're just waiting. There's a question tab in the control panel, and you can type them in. And we're here. We'll wait a few minutes to see, you know, what comes up on your side of the screen.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't sure. Will it come up on my side too, I guess, over here?
Yeah, no, I think, okay. So the source for the CL drivers?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, is that your question, Pamela? What are you asking exactly? What is the source for the CL drivers?
Okay.
Yes,
So for
the URL.
the URL is right here, and this is for I believe just Windows. But yeah, so if you're using a Windows machine, you can use this stuff too. So it should be right here. I don't know if you guys can see it or not. I can probably put it on a notepad and make it a little larger, but it's software.intel.com. And if you can't find it, just put in into Google OpenCL drivers, OpenCL drivers, Intel, and that'll bring this up. So this is kind of hidden away, though. This is kind of weird that it's I guess because it's experimental. So, but the one you're going to want to use is this guy here. Where is it at? Let me find it again here. Yeah, runtime. So you want to do for the runtime packages right here. So the CPU only runtime packages. That's the one you want, and that will get that stuff up and running on your CPU if you want to use it. All right.
So we have another question.
Okay.
We have a few other questions. Okay. And Ali is asking, my question is related to the Q solver. Can we make edges fix without using 3D Party plugins?
The what solver?
The Q solver.
The Q solver.
Yes.
The Q, like the letter Q?
Yes. Ali?
I'm not sure kind of what he's asking. The Q solver.
So I'm asking, yeah, let's ask Ali to explain what exactly it means, and I'm going to move on to the next question. How can you understand sub-steps better? I mean, like default, the minimum value is 1 and the maximum value is 333, for instance.
Mm-hmm. Oh, how do you understand that better?
Yes.
Okay, so let's see here. All right, I'll make a couple of pieces of geometry here. So we have a plane, and we'll make a sphere. And let's say this plane or this sphere is going through the sphere, right? So let's say the sphere. I'll just animate this down. So K, move this down like to here to 30, and then bring this back down. And let's kind of illustrate some points here. So in RealFlow, and like everything else, so let's say you have a 1 and 33. So the minimum is the minimum. 1 will be the minimum amount of substeps, which is 1, that it's going to do. And how the program and most other programs works is that, let's say, hey, this is our surface, and let's say we want to generate particles when this guy hits, right? So it's coming down, coming down. So right now it's only using a substep of 1, right? So 1, 1, 1, 1, and then once it gets in there, it'll start using a lot more substeps, right? So it's going to start using the 333, or that will be the maximum amount. And that's a good way of thinking about it. It's the steps in between the frames in which the computer is saying, hey, how many steps am I going to need to solve this problem that's thrown at me? Let's see here. Another way to think about it is it's like, when this is, when it's coming down, if you want to make sure that it generates particles before it hits, I mean, right on the surface, that you'd want to make your minimum higher. So that way it's looking in between these two keyframes, right? So it's coming over to say here. Oops, wrong way. Let's do this again. Mess that up. Put this over. So it's from here to here. So it's going to look in between those two keyframes and essentially do these substeps. And the minimum and maximum, yeah, that's the easiest way I can kind of explain it. I hope that helps. Yeah.
Okay, so the next question is from Chill, and he's wondering about the ability to make tools for procedural operation. And he's asking, is there a source online for a starting point, so it doesn't have to start to at zero all the time?
So for instance, let's say if you want to make tools, basically to load in your own tools, essentially, right? I guess that's what he's asking. Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of different ways you can do that. I see what you're saying, like you want to just tab in and be like, hey, let's make our own tools. There are ways you can do scripting to make your own kind of emitters and whatnot. But unfortunately, there's not a lot you can do without kind of just starting, copy and pasting from scratch. You can, let's say this is your setup. You make let's say this is your splash guy here. You're going to be using this on this show, and you're going to use it a lot. Let's delete this and delete this. You can come up to File, and you can, let's see, I think if I remember correctly, let's see, Save As. Yeah, you can export this stuff out too. So Edit, File, oops, sorry. Revert, I guess. Export, yeah, that's what we want to do here. Project as XML. You can do a project as XML and then, or selected nodes, and then you can import them in as XML if I remember right. Unfortunately, that's kind of one of the big downsides to RealFlow is the I guess, like you said, the procedurally based, or like, hey, let's use this file here and there, and that's kind of the problem with it. You can do it, but it's going to take you some time and some scripting. If you want to learn scripting or the graph stuff inside RealFlow, there's some great tutorials that I think Next Limit has. You can look up on YouTube or Vimeo. But yeah, hope that answers your question.
Okay, next question. Hold on, there keep coming in. Here it is. Are standard particles obsolete? And if not, do they have any use over Diverso particles?
Very good question, actually. Yeah, so standard particles. Yeah, so standard particles still sort of have some use, I guess. Right now, as of right now, RealFlow doesn't have a true viscous solver for Diverso stuff here. We can use the SPH, guy here. Let's use our domain here, actually. If we come down here and use SPH, we can mess with the viscosity, and we'll get some sort of viscoelastic kind of stuff, but it won't be fast. It'll be really slow. It won't be quite as stable. You can use standard particles for that as well. That's usually pretty pretty good for that sort of thing. It has a fibers thing. I guess some people still use. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, I don't see myself really using these very often. You can use it for certain things. It used to be really useful when you could use the container stuff now. But let's say, for instance, now I'll just do a quick demo here. Let's say we want this domain here to turn into, let's say this water shooting up here, we want it to turn into sand, right? So let's go ahead and make a filter daemon. And this is why I'm showing you this is because before you couldn't be able to do this. You could only do this with the containers, and now they've implemented this where we can do two different domains. So we can just copy, Control D to duplicate that over, and then we'll go ahead and make another circle emitter, D, and connect this to this. Key here is we're going to have to make sure our speed's 0 and our resolution is the same. So 1, make sure this is 1. So now let's go to our filter, our source. Here, let's do, if it's true, we want to do domain 3. And right now, it's going to want to look for domain 1 as a source. So domain 1 is moving up. And then so we want to say, hey, after a certain position on Y. So let's say about 4 or so. And again, I'm just showing this because it's kind of cool that you can actually kind of do this now. And let's make sure our domain 3 is granular. And you're going to save this guy real quick. Before you couldn't do this with Diverso, and then they changed it up. Let's see, it should start to turn here hopefully pretty soon. Yeah, there it goes. Before you'd had to use standard particles and use containers. So this is another, I guess that answers your question. This is kind of obsolete. So.
Oh, good to know. Okay, so regarding the question that we couldn't, figure out about can we make edges thick without using 3D Party plugin. So Elise sent a screenshot of what it means, and I think I assigned it to you, so you should have a question mark in your control panel. If you click on it, you'll see the link.
All right,
let me know.
Find that here. Let's see. Oh. Oh, yes.
Is it more clear now?
I'm trying to see if I can click on this here. Let's see, where am I? Oh, okay, yeah, I see it now. Let me just copy and paste this into my browser real quick here. So what was the question again exactly? So he wanted to, let's say it's a crown splash, right? That's what I'm looking at here, a little splashy. To use 3D particles again. Yeah, I guess I'm still not quite understanding the question. Hello?
Hi, sorry, I muted myself by accident. So it was wondering if you could make the edges thick without using 3D Party plugins.
Oh, nah, not. I kind of see what he's getting at, like the holes and stuff. And if you want to do it still, you could take it in a ZBrush and sculpt it in. But unfortunately, in order to get those holes filled and thick again, you'd either have to make your mesh a lot thicker, and your radius bigger on your meshing, or I can just kind of show you. It looks like you kind of know what you're doing here. So let me see if I got some particles here I can mesh.
And he's asking, how can we simulate in ZBrush, for instance?
Oh, not simulate. What you could do is take your, you could take that mesh. If you're just doing a still, like a pack shot or something, you could fill the holes up in ZBrush for sure. But ZBrush, I've used numerous times. I would take my workflow method would be to export on my mesh out to max, which would be a bin file, and then I would export that back out to OBJ into RealFlow. But that's only if you're doing one frame. You couldn't do the whole sequence like that. That would be insane.
Okay, so he's not, I don't think he's talking about stills. He doesn't, I think he's not working with stills. That's
Yeah,
what
that's
I'm
what I was
hearing.
thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah. You'd have to make your radius a lot bigger, unfortunately, or you're just going to have to add more particles in order to make that work for you.
All right. Hope that helps, Ali. And next question from Pam again. Any advice, recommendation on generally good dampening values or value range for Diverso? That is, are there extreme values I should avoid?
Yeah, good dampening values, usually for me, I like to stick it to about 1 to start out with, and this totally depends on your sub-steps too. So like I said, it's going to be kind of dance between, you know, what you want to do. But the faster your stuff is, you're going to have to use more dampening. Kind of keep that as a rule of thumb. Other extreme stuff, they say in their help not to do the interpenetration over 1, though I have had some interesting stuff come out with after I do a pass 1 or you know, anything that they say is a pass 1. It's always kind of interesting to see what it does. But as far as that, I usually don't stick my static friction to 1 because, especially on the granular stuff, because what that is essentially doing, that's maxes that out, and I usually get a lot of inconsistencies, a lot of popping after it's around 1. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, I haven't had any really big like gotchas, but for sure you want to. I usually don't stick my stack friction to 1 all the way up, so that's one thing to do.
Cool. And is there another way to do web maps with Hybrido other than graphs and scripting, or that's the only way to do so? For an example, as an example, a beach with breaking waves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. With the Verso right now, if I remember correctly, yeah, I haven't. I'll be completely honest with you. I haven't messed with a bunch of the web map stuff inside here. But if we were to connect, I'm just want to see here. I think we should, though. In theory, I think we should be able to just do it now because it has the option here. Let me just double check here. We can do this. He might be right, though. That may be one of those features that the standard stuff might be better at, or might be working. So let me delete, make sure that this is this one. Okay. Delete this stuff here. Yeah, because if we come down to our wet dry texture, yeah, there's that. Simulate. Oops, I guess I need to have it collide. Well, it should work. Yeah, so just make sure, it looks like you want to make sure that your wet dry texture is on, and then when you export it, go to your export central here and come under objects, wet map texture here is selected, or we can come over here to our wet map texture here. Let's go to yes. But yeah, that should work. If you have any issues with it, just make sure that that stuff is being exported out properly. But yeah, looks like that works fine.
Wonderful. And going back to the sub-steps, to be more specific, how do you determine the sub-step value that will work the best with the size of the simulation, large sim or small one, for instance?
Yeah, so, well, I mean, if you're doing a large sim, let's say if you're doing hybrido stuff here, funny enough that a lot of stuff is going to be a lot lower sub-step, funny enough. But you really just want to take into account of, do you have any animation in your scene? If you have animation in your scene, then you're going to want more sub-steps for sure, because those collisions and the stuff that it's moving around is, you know, it's going to need those sub-steps of that geometry. Now, if you're just doing like this Diverso stuff and you're doing like, say, some blood squirting out in the air, you really don't need hardly any substeps at all. So if you're doing a large scale scene and it's not Diverso usually needs more substeps than Hybrido. And that's kind of a rule of thumb too. So Hybrido doesn't usually need that much substeps. I mean, literally, most of the time I'll go with the default, and if I start seeing issues, you just up your sub steps. So that's a good rule of thumb.
Okay, and now the million-dollar questions. What is your favorite render for RealFlow?
Oh boy, favorite render for RealFlow. Well, I do love Redshift. Redshift is an amazing render, or V-Ray. V-Ray is kind of industry standard. Redshift is great because it's a GPU render. It's incredibly fast. It is, I mean, it blows me away how fast it is. It seems like everything's kind of coming to GPUs and whatnot. But yeah, I usually use, short answer is V-Ray or Redshift. I have used Clarice stuff in the past for Clarice for some water stuff just to test stuff out, and it seemed to work pretty. It handles meshes really nicely. But yeah, that's about what I use.
Okay, thank you so much then. That was very helpful, and we got great feedback throughout the webinar, and everybody seems very grateful to you, Brandon. And I'm sorry to take away the screen and do my final wrap. So I want to thank everybody for joining us today. And I also want to remind you to visit our page at novedge.com, where you can find RealFlow 10 and, you know, check it out. Novedge is the best way to buy design software online, and our prices are unbeatable. And also for information on specials and new releases, you can always join our network on Facebook, Google+, and Twitter, and you get the latest specials as they happen, so you don't have to miss it. And next webinar will be on Maxo Render version 4. And to rewatch today's webinar or previous ones, check out our Novedge YouTube and Vimeo channels, our webinar playlist as webinars for every software taste. Thanks again for joining us today, and thank you so much for our awesome presenter, Brandon Young. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, everyone.